Okay, fine. I confess. I love Professor Layton, and I'll admit I cried like a baby at the recent A New World of Steam trailer. I mean, Professor Layton was a franchise integral to my childhood. It was one of 4 games that I would play religiously with my mother, and by play with, I mean I would read through the story and pass it off when the game got too hard. It's easy to say that a franchise is widely beloved just because it's beloved to me, but I was so surprised growing up to discover that this franchise has more of a cult following than I would have expected. I mean, sure, I was a dork growing up. That, plus I was desperate to find a game I was good at to prove my worth to the boys in my class. Not being good at video games is a real blow to the feminist cause when you're 7 years old. But come on, this was a game that was like homework, but even more fun? Okay, I mean, not really. I mean, on the surface, sure, these are a series of puzzle games, and if you wanted to, you absolutely could go into any CEX and pick up any Professor Layton game, play through the puzzles if you wanted something insignificant to do for 15 minutes, and then move on with your life. But I have a problem of not moving on from anything in my life. So, in celebration of the upcoming installment, I wanted to talk you through an entire timeline of this franchise, a guide to the lore, if you will, all the way from its very humble beginnings to its recent, very tragic end. Like all good franchises, Professor Layton can be divided into the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, and the other stuff, in that order. Keep an eye on the top left to check which game in the series I'm specifically referencing as I go through the lore. And as excited as I am to dive in, I need you to know that I will be spoiling this franchise. Knowing what I'm about to tell you won't ruin the experience of playing these games, especially since I'm not giving you the solution to any of the puzzles or anything. But if you haven't played a Professor Layton game before, then I obviously really think you should. This was kind of my biggest issue when writing this video. I mean, I love Professor Layton. I love talking about it, thinking about it, playing it, watching it. But this is a franchise that hinges on the twist endings and the solving of mysteries. And if I reveal everything to you, then what's the fun in that? So, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you every piece of information about this lore, but I'm not going to tell you the answer to any of the mysteries, and I'm not going to tell you how any of the games end. I think it would be best if I present you all the evidence and leave it up to you to solve. Keep a notebook handy if you want to try and figure out these riddles as we go, but hopefully I've struck the balance between being a complete point of reference for the lore without giving you every single piece of information. But first, we need to know how we got here. And don't worry, this is going to be brief since this is a pretty widely known origin story. Or maybe I'm just saying that because I know it. Anyway, as a child, Professor Layton creator Akihiro Hino was a huge fan of the Atamino Taitsu puzzle books, and he certainly was not the only fan. This series of books were enormously popular in the late 60s and 70s, so naturally, when Hino founded Level 5 and became president, he was interested in the development of some kind of Atamino Taitsu-inspired video game for the company's first independent project. So, in 2006, Level 5 reached out to the author of the books, Professor Akira Tago, to collaborate on the project. Now, like I said, these books were hugely influential, so Hino wasn't the only person inspired. The creators of IQ Engine, Magical Brain Power, and Brain Beauty IQ Supplement all credit the books with being the catalyst for the game's creations. But the one thing that distinguishes Professor Layton from all of these other puzzle games is Layton. The first installment boasted an engaging narrative, world, and characters that would give context to the puzzles that you have to solve. In fact, although the European advertisements prior to the launch focused on the academic aspect of the game, the American and Japanese teasers focused pretty solely on this expansive story. Over a year after its initial Japanese launch, the first Professor Layton title, Professor Layton and the Curious Village, was finally released in Europe on November 7th, 2008. And here, I'm gonna set the record straight right now. I'm English. I grew up with the European versions of these games. And if you don't know, there are slight differences between some of the puzzles and some of the titles of these games. I'm using the titles that I grew up with. If that confuses you, sorry! For example, I just talked about Curious Village, the first installment of this franchise. A year later, Pandora's Box was released, but you might know it better as Professor Layton and the Diabolical Box. Way worse name, way worse title. Even if I wasn't European, I'd be using this version. Cause what the hell is I got a Diabolical Box right here for you. I'm using the European titles. Arguably more important than the titles are the release dates. You'll notice that I mentioned that after the launch of Curious Village 1 year later was the launch of Pandora's Box. And then a year later, the next game came out. And then a year later, the next game came out. For the first 6 Professor Layton games, we got a game every year. That would be a trend that would unravel during the spin-off era, the sequels if you will. But let's be honest with ourselves, that was the easiest 6 years of Christmas shopping my mother ever did from 2008 to 2013. While I've brought them up, I'll just say that I will not be talking about the spin-offs or the novelization or the anime in this video. Not only do I consider them not particularly canon, but also, I'm salty. I'm salty that Catriel got to the Switch before Layton did. That's ridiculous. So, we're not talking about it. Sorry. I don't like those games. All love to Catriel, I just think that trying to revive Layton for a new generation while he's still alive and breathing is rude. It's rude, and I don't like it. And I don't like the games, and I don't like how you have to buy every puzzle on the app individually. Oh yeah, Professor Layton's an app now. They've apped my boy. But we won't talk about that anymore, because then I'll get angry. And my doctor said that I need to look after my blood pressure. Theodor Bronev is one of 2 sons to Rachel and Leon, born at some point in the late 70s in a small village. His father, Leon, is an archaeologist who is studying the lost civilization of Azran, an obsession that led him to be targeted by the criminal organization Targent, who kidnapped his 2 sons and his wife. Following the kidnapping, Rachel fell gravely ill and tragically passed away. The now orphaned boys were then introduced to a young couple from Stansbury, Roland and Lucille, who, unfortunately, were only interested in adopting one of the boys. Though the couple couldn't tell the brothers apart, they decided to adopt the boy named Herschel, Theodore's older brother. Herschel, not satisfied with leaving his younger brother to fend for himself alone, decided to switch their names, so Theodor Bronev became Herschel Layton. Herschel studied at Kingsbrook Academy. There, he would befriend Randall and Angela, who inspired his love of archaeology.
Randall, I told you, I'm not interested in archaeology.
Stop with the nonsense, Herschel.
Taking after his biological father, who by this time had risen in the ranks of the criminal organisation Targent, and had adopted a new child, the orphan Emmy Altava, who he introduced to his criminal lifestyle and even taught how to fight. Back at Kingsbrook, Randall revealed his newest breakthrough to his girlfriend Angela and best friend Layton: the truth behind the ruins of Akbadeen, the fallen civilization of the Azran people.
So what do you say there, old chum? You're in, right?
Randall, I don't... Okay.
Specifically, Randall used the Mask of Chaos to discover that the directions to these ruins may be engraved in the form of a cipher on the conveniently local wall of Norwell. Hearing this, Layton hesitantly agrees to join Randall in an expedition to investigate the cipher, but Layton would return to Angela empty-handed. No answers, no treasure, and no Randall. During their expedition, he fell to the bottom of the ruins with the Mask of Chaos, presumed dead. The only thing left in Randall's legacy was his research, the supposed key to unlock this mystery. In his mourning, Layton moves to London to pursue a career in archaeology, studying alongside classmates Paul, Clark, and Claire, who would become Layton's girlfriend. To celebrate his graduation and becoming a certified professor, Claire gifted Layton a top hat. And with that final piece of the puzzle, we finally have the titular Professor Layton. It's also worth noting at this point that Claire is, in addition to being Layton's love interest, the assistant to renowned scientist Dimitri Allen and Bill Hawkes at the Institute of Polydimensional Physics. The trio are collaborating to successfully invent a time machine that Claire has been chosen to be the first test subject for. Tragically, maybe expectedly, the time machine explodes, with Claire inside during testing. Layton hears about this and rushes to the Institute, only to find a large fire that is ravishing both the building and the adjacent housing. The only person he can save from the blaze is a now orphaned young boy. Now teaching at Gressenheller University, we find a 34-year-old Layton in his office after just receiving a mysterious letter from his old classmate, Clark Triton. The message causes him to rush out of the building and into his iconic Layton-mobile. Immediately, he almost hits a girl with his car, who introduces herself as his new assistant, Emmy Altava. Not in the mood to argue, or maybe feeling regret for almost killing her, Layton brings her along on the investigation of this new mystery. They eventually make it to Misanthropy, only to discover that Clark didn't write this letter, his son did, Luke Triton. Luke, having heard about Layton's academic renown and about his connection to his father, wanted to reach out following a series of mysterious incidents regarding the town's recent ghost problem. Or spectres, because this game is called Spectre's Call, these are the spectres. Chills. Now, naturally, I'm not going to reveal the truth behind the spectres to you, nor who is behind the mysterious disappearances within Misanthropy. The only lore-relevant details that are revealed in this game is that beneath Misanthropy is the Golden Garden, a subterranean sanctuary built by the Azran people. This garden is the first of 3 Azran legacies that we see in this franchise. And it's important to know that it is now archaeologically vital that Layton discovers the remaining legacies before Targent can discover them and harness their power for themselves. Thankfully in this case, the discovery of the Golden Garden is credited to Professor Layton, and the many articles about this revelation act as the catalyst for Layton's fame and career. Spectre's Call also introduces us to a man called Descalais, who is nefariously involved to some degree, but who the hell is Descalais? Is he a member of Targent? Why does he know Layton? I mean, I don't remember talking about this guy in Layton's backstory. If the game lore is getting too much for you at this point, then don't worry, because in 2010, Professor Layton made it to the big screen via Professor Layton and the Eternal Diva. Or in my case, he made it to the little screen because I had the DVD. Usually with anime or game movie adaptations, the canonicity is dubious at best, but you'll be glad to know that I'm talking about the movie because it's surprisingly completely canon, at least insofar as the events and locations are referenced in the upcoming game installments. But what the hell is an Eternal Diva, I hear you ask? Good question. Let's find out. Janice Quatlin is a former student of Layton, and one day she writes him a letter to invite him and Luke to see her operatic performance at the Crown Patone in Ambrosia, an Azran city that myths say contains the secrets to eternal life. Layton, of course, attends, and the show is a success until it's rudely interrupted by a voice wanting to play a game, Jigsaw style. Of course, the game is puzzles. The prize is eternal life, just like the myth claims, and the punishment, eternal death. Oh yes, just because this is a film doesn't mean we don't still have to solve puzzles. I mean, we don't solve the puzzles, they're just kind of presented to us while Layton thinks about them for a while, and then he solves them. This didn't stop me from pausing the movie as a kid to figure out what was happening there. And the one puzzle I vividly remember was this. Puzzle number 4. As you can see, there are 4 doors leading to 4 towers. Now look at the courtyard. One of these 4 towers contains the king's chamber. Find the door that leads to the king's chamber, and when you do, enter that tower. So we have a courtyard with doors in each cardinal direction, and between each door is a sign with the letters H, I, K, and G respectively. All we need to do is figure out which door to enter. Feel free to pause here if you haven't seen this puzzle before and want to give it a go. It's so stupid, but for some reason it stuck out to me as a kid. The door we want to enter is the one that leads to the king's chamber. So if we turn to the door between letters K and G, we can fill in the empty space in between the letters with I-N to spell out king. And that points us to which door we need to go in. Get it? I didn't. I'm 99% sure the reason I remember this puzzle so vividly is because I actually didn't figure it out. I must have had that movie paused for hours, and I couldn't figure out how they got to that conclusion other than the fact that, yeah, I guess if you spell out a word, it makes the word. Thus began my lifelong rivalry with Luke Triton. Anyway, the gang figures it out, 9-year-old me is embarrassed, and they go through the correct door, only to be met with Descalais. Why is Descalais back? Who is this guy? Well, if you haven't figured it out yet, Descalais is the antagonist of the prequel trilogy. Not to spoil too much, but if there's something fishy going on in these 3 games, then this freak is probably behind it. This is not a lesson that Layton ever learns. Descalais' motive in this movie is to find the 3 melodies that make up the harmony that will raise Ambrosia from the water. Oh yeah, Ambrosia's underwater. It's like an Atlantis thing. This whole movie is set on the boat that's sailing above Ambrosia. This is an issue you'll see repeatedly being raised with Descalais as a villain. I mean, he wants to raise the city of Ambrosia. Spoiler alert, so do we. Spoiler alert, Layton does! Layton does raise the city of Ambrosia, so ideologically, we're allies. We want the same thing. We were gonna do that anyway. Keep that in mind with Descalais going forward. Oh, and the myth of eternal life was just an allegory for remembering your loved ones when they pass away. Which I guess is sweet, but if I'm on a cruise ship, and you threaten to kill me if I don't get some puzzles correct, but the prize for getting them correct is eternal life, and then you said that to me? Give me immortality. Give me immortality. That's messed up! That's false advertising! But other than that, the movie's fine. 6 out of 10. It's fun. If you can't play the games, watch the movie. It's sweet. A few months after the events of Eternal Diva, Layton, Luke, and Emmy find themselves in Monte d'Or, a perpetual party of a desert town fueled by tourism. That is not Las Vegas. This is totally not Las Vegas. Turns out that Layton was invited here by his old classmate and friend, Angela Lador. She's now married to the founder of Monte d'Or, and is begging Layton for his help in discovering the truth behind the recent miracles that are occurring in this town.
Dearest Herschel, I trust this letter finds you well. I've read wonderful things about your work, Herschel, or rather, Professor Layton. It's difficult to believe it has been nearly 18 years. I'm sure this letter comes as quite a surprise, but I must ask for your help. We have experienced a series of terrifying incidents here in Monte d'Or. I must be cursed by the Mask of Chaos, for it is now threatening to destroy our city. I hope you can forgive me after all these years. I don't know who else I can turn to. I cannot give you the full details now. However, if you can spare the time, I shall tell you all upon your arrival. We are in desperate need of your help, Herschel. I've enclosed the address for the Lador estate. I hope to see you soon. Angela Lador.
During a festival with Layton and company in attendance, we get to see one of these so-called miracles. A man who calls himself the Masked Gentleman is warning the audience of the impending destruction of Monte d'Or. He then sprouts wings and flies away after turning some citizens into stone. Okay, miracle or not, it's at least unnerving. Emmy shares with us that the mask is rumoured to give its wearer great power, and ever since the Masked Gentleman appeared in Monte d'Or a month ago, the city is in fear of his miracles. Everything from bringing portraits to life to now turning people to stone. The police have no leads on who the man behind the mask is, and have no idea how he's performing these miracles. That's for us to figure out. Layton meets up with Angela, and he speculates on how this anonymous antagonist could have possibly acquired the miracle mask that Randall, his childhood friend and Angela's childhood sweetheart, died for. She explains that after Randall's disappearance, his housekeeper, Henry, searched for him endlessly. And on one of his expeditions, he actually recovered the Mask of Chaos, as well as the treasure hidden within the ruins that Randall and Layton explored all those years ago. Angela says that this finding brought Henry his fortune, allowing him to marry Angela and establish the town of Monte d'Or. Unfortunately, the mask was stolen from Henry's office around the time that the Masked Gentleman appeared. Before we can speak to Henry about this obvious suspicion, the Masked Gentleman forwards a letter, warning Layton about his upcoming miracle.
Greetings, my friends. I trust you enjoyed last night's festivities. I certainly did. It's so refreshing. You see, people made of stone cannot cheat, lie. In fact, they cannot do anything unpleasant. They just stand there in dignified silence. To rob a person of their power to do evil is quite miraculous, don't you think? Almost as miraculous. Follow up tonight. I'll be performing in the Gallery Plaza, and I assure you, it will be most enlightening experience. I hope you will attend. Until then, I, the Masked Gentleman, bid you adieu.
Now, other than Henry, who is at this time still unaccounted for, the only other suspect is Alphonse, a casino owner in Monte d'Or who would greatly profit from the tourism generated from the chaos of these miracles. As Henry finally appears, Alphonse is placed into custody. The reason being that if the Masked Gentleman does perform another miracle tonight, then we at least know that it can't possibly be Alphonse behind it. As he's being dragged away, Alphonse accuses Henry of being the Masked Gentleman, claiming that he is behind everything from a forced marriage to Angela to Randall's disappearance. Okay, now that both characters have been introduced, now's probably the best time to reveal that the English voice actors for Henry and Angela respectively are Matt Mercer and Laura Bailey. And listen, I know they're voice actors. I know they've been in a lot of things. But in the making of this video, this is not a joke, this is not hyperbole. These two have been in everything I've watched. Everything. So imagine my horror to see them in the credits of this game as well. I'm filing a restraining order! My favourite part of the clue hunting occurs the next day, when Layton and team head to Pumpkin Park. It's bustling and loud and just as overstimulating as all theme parks are, so there's nothing out of the ordinary. There, they discover that the Masked Gentleman has set up some puzzles for them, which Layton and Luke are happily distracted by in the middle of a serious investigation, before running off to hide in the tower on the edge of the park. The Masked Gentleman is followed by Layton, Luke, and Emmy, who were joined by Angela and Henry during the chase. They all make it to the tower just as the lights flicker off and a sudden quake shakes the group. At this point, the Masked Gentleman has escaped, but as they leave in defeat, they notice that the park is now, suddenly, desolate. Not in a way that suggests everyone has left, but rather in a way that implies that nobody has ever been there. Almost immediately, Angela gets kidnapped by the masked gentleman and is taken back into the tower, so the group chase them into the tower, which triggers another blackout and small quake, giving them just enough time to save Angela and return to the now bustling park. They decide to not question it for now and call it a day. My favourite moments in the Professor Layton games are when they get a little silly with it. And this moment, certified silly. This is ridiculous. It reads and plays like a Scooby-Doo chase scene. It's so unserious, and I love it. This is peak Layton to me. Like, you know that moment in Ace Attorney when they have a parrot on the witness stand and they have to interrogate the parrot? That's silly. This is silly. Back at the Lador estate the following day, the Layton team, I'm trying out a nickname, run into Angela, who asks if the three have found the Mask of Order. Huh? Hold on. I thought it was called the Mask of Chaos. And why would we have found it? Angela doesn't seem like herself. But, I don't know. Maybe I'm being paranoid. I guess she does look different without that pendant she always wears. Anyway, after discovering that Monte d'Or was built in the hopes of being a home for Randall to return to, which is very sweet and always makes me cry if I think about it for too long, the Laytonites, nope, that's not it, head to the masked gentleman's alleged current location, the Reunion Inn, in which the group find a series of storybooks that tell a tale eerily reminiscent of Randall's disappearance, before finally meeting and uncovering the masked gentleman.
It was all quite miraculous.
The greatest achievement is often the one that is the most selfless.
Our time at Monte d'Or is concluded by the revelation that, amongst other things, Descalais is not working for Targent. And for those keeping note, I will nudge you to the correct conclusion by reassuring you that he also wasn't the masked gentleman. He manages to flee the city just before the leader of Targent takes control of the Nautilus Chamber of Akbadeen, found within Monte d'Or. This was the third Azran legacy, so Targent now has control of all of them. And if that wasn't bad enough, if you bought a digital copy of this game via Nintendo eShop and registered it with Club Nintendo within 2 months of launch, then you got a free copy of Donkey Kong. Okay, I guess that isn't bad at all. Well, it's not bad, but I feel left out, because that was only available for North American players. I wanted Donkey Kong. We start the following game on a sour note. Almost 1 year after the events of Miracle Mask, Targent now, somehow, have possession of all 3 Azran legacies: the Golden Garden, the City of Ambrosia, and the Nautilus Chamber of Akbadeen. And guess what? Layton just received another letter, this time from a fellow archaeology professor, Desmond Sycamore, in which he claims that the town of Froenborg has a problem with a so-called living mummy. So, Layton, Emmy, and Luke make their way into Froenborg, eventually stumbling upon a cave which surprisingly opens using a hidden lever to lower a wall of ice blocking its entrance. When inside, the group finds Professor Sycamore observing a girl frozen in ice, the aforementioned living mummy. After safely freeing the girl from the ice, Targent attempts to kidnap her, but she is ultimately, thankfully, rescued by Layton. This girl is Aurora, a girl from the Azran era who instructs us to travel the world to find 5 Azran Aura Stones. Doing so will supposedly reveal the true nature of the key to the Azran legacy, as well as restoring Aurora's memories of her time. So let me get this straight. We've spent the entire franchise so far building up the importance of the 3 Azran legacies, only to be told now that we need to travel the world to find 5 Azran eggs? It's an egg hunt that should be a monumental challenge, but it reads as nothing more than clunky. I mean, we're traveling the world, but we're not in any of these locations long enough to actually truly appreciate them. And we should appreciate them. These are cool locations that are based on mythology, famous stories like Romeo and Juliet and Dragon, Cowboy Red Riding Hood, Sleeping Beauty Phoenix, Dragon Quest I, and even the other one. This should be fun, but it isn't. It's a slog, and I don't like it. I don't like it. Now, back in the Frohenborg cave, Emmy reveals her childhood connection to Targent, and a newly revealed Descalais reveals that I actually did mention him during Layton's backstory. As the mysteries of this town are revealed and solved, Layton drives away, leaving Emmy, Targent, Descalais, and the now solved puzzle of the Azran civilization, a puzzle that became his father's obsession, behind him. And with a transition that's so smooth, it makes me wonder why fans even have to speculate about the chronology of these games. We see him drive into the titular curious village of the first game, Saint Mystère. Absolute cinema. Well, Targent has been dealt with. They got him. So what now? Well, Baron Reinhold is dead. That's right, the Baron of the Curious Village, Augustus Reinhold, has passed away, leaving only his will, which specifies that anyone who can find the golden apple hidden somewhere within Saint Mystère will receive his entire estate. There are 4 members of the Reinhold family, excluding their employees, and to understand this case, I think I should draw a little family tree here. Augustus was married to the late Lady Violet, then got remarried to Lady Dahlia. Together, Lady Violet and Augustus had a daughter, Flora. Augustus also has a brother called Gordon and a nephew called Simon. Working at the Reinhold estate, we have Bruna, Matthew, and Raymond. Despite this generous will, there's no foul play in regards to the Baron's death, but there is foul play involved when Simon is found dead in the Reinhold manor, and Raymond is reported missing by an apparent kidnapping. The only evidence we have is a small gear left by Simon's body. During Layton's investigation, we learn from the puzzle-obsessed townsfolk that it's a common, almost expected occurrence in this town for citizens to go missing as soon as they fall ill. So, apparently, Raymond must just be sick. Case closed. Now, what's unfortunate about Curious Village appearing at this point in our chronology, despite it being the first game in the series, is that the catalyst for Layton's suspicions around Saint Mystère is the fact that all of the townsfolk have an uncanny, almost robotic obsession with puzzles. But this is a puzzle game. Based off everything we've seen and will come to see, everyone in this world has an obsession with puzzles. Speaking of puzzles, how's this one? Raymond is back in the manor, alive and well, with no recollection of ever being kidnapped. It's at this point I should introduce you to the recurring detective of this franchise, Inspector Chelmy. He's usually an ally to Layton's investigations. He's gruff, relatively inept, and hates sweets. I tell you all this to say he's acting out of the ordinary after Raymond's reappearance. He's suddenly accusatory to Layton and seems to be pillaging the town for some sweet treats. Thankfully for me, that's not illegal, so Layton doesn't interrogate him and moves on to investigate the town to find the golden apple and, more importantly, solve Simon's death. Something that Layton does find in his investigation is Flora, the Baron's daughter, living inside a tower on the edge of the village. A tower that is soon attacked by Don Paolo, the main antagonist of the original trilogy. Turns out that Don Paolo was disguised as Inspector Chelmy, hoping to frame Layton for Simon's death. And I'm getting deja vu, because who is this guy? I swear I didn't actually mention him in Layton's backstory. Unless I did. The secret of the town's uncanniness is resolved after it's discovered that Simon was actually not dead. Which is a shame since this had potential to be a fun murder mystery, but that's classic Layton for you. With everything accounted for except this so-called golden apple, Layton is content to leave Saint Mystère with a new enemy on his tail and a new budding assistant, Flora, who was eager to join Layton and Luke's adventure after living a boring life in this small village. As Layton drives away, Flora rests her head on the car window, with the apple-shaped birthmark on her shoulder revealed. A few months later, Layton receives a letter from his old mentor, Dr. Andrew Schrader, and at this point I do have to mention that according to my maths, the in-universe year should be 2005. Is nobody writing emails, or...?
My dear Herschel, as an archaeologist, you are sure to have heard of the item known as the Elysian Box. Of course, it's more commonly known as Pandora's Box, in reference to the famous myth. This nickname would appear to be well-deserved, since it is rumored to kill whoever opens it. I'm dubious of this reputation, of course, but when my interest is piqued, I simply must investigate. That's why I'm pleased as punch to tell you that the elusive item is finally in my possession. What's more, I believe I'm on the cusp of unraveling a great mystery tied to this box. For the moment, let's just say I have a theory, though I haven't been able to prove it yet. Initially, it was my intention to finish my research before daring to open its lid, but I must confess that my curiosity is simply overpowering. In the unlikely event that anything should happen to me, please finish the work I've started here. Your friend, Andrew Schrader.
Now, I don't want to set expectations too high by saying that this is the most controversial Professor Layton game, but I found that fans either consider Spectre's Call to be the best or the worst in the franchise. Which is ridiculous because we just talked about Curious Village, and that one's obviously the worst, so what are we doing? Anyway, Layton and Luke, notably without Flora, travel down to London to investigate this Elysian box, only to discover that Dr. Schrader is dead in his home, and this box of interest is missing. Layton and Luke decide to meet up with Flora and board the Mollentary Express. The conductor of this train happens to be a former student of Layton's, as seen in Eternal Diva, Sammy Thunder, who drugs the group and redirects the train to take them to the abandoned city of Falsense, the same city that Dr. Schrader visited right before his death. Guess we had a false sense of security on this train, huh? While there, we learn that this town has strong ties to both Pandora's Box and vampirism. Eek! Now that we're relatively safe in a Falsensian hotel, surrounded by Inspector Chelmey's suspects for the murder of Dr. Schrader, I'll give you a moment to guess which character was actually Don Paolo in disguise. Flora. It was Flora. I hate to play favourites between the two main antagonists of this franchise, but compared to Descalais, Don Paolo is a complete boy failure. His disguise gimmick is fun, but he loses all aura as he reveals that he was the one who stole Pandora's box, and then he drops it as he flees the hotel. Another suspect and Sammy Thunder's uncle, Frederick Beluga, then steps forward, claiming that his family actually owns the rights to Pandora's box by way of heritage, but his claim to the box is void after he abandoned the town of Falsense and thus the box 50 years ago. So, the box is ours for the time being, and just like Dr. Schrader, curiosity becomes too much for Layton, who opens the box in his hotel room. He dies immediately, and the game ends. Now, unfortunately the box is empty and nothing happens. Now it's a game of lost and found, as Layton and Luke explore Falsense to try and find the true owner of Pandora's box, a quest that leads them to Anton Herzen, Frederick Beluga's older brother, also known as the Duke of Falsense. Listen, I don't want to appear ageist in this video, shout out to all the hags watching, but Frederick Beluga is at least 60 years old based on what we found out at the hotel, or at least old enough to have an appreciation of watching opera at the Crown Patone. But I'm expected to believe he's Anton's younger brother? I don't buy it. After some of arguably the coolest and unsettling scenes in the franchise, if I decide they're not too spoilery, I'll show them here, Layton finally gets to return the box to Anton, who shows the professor how to open the box's secret compartment, in which there's a letter from Anton's late fiancée, Sophia.
You've been in my thoughts since the day we parted, and now, though my time here is drawing to a close, I like to think we'll meet again on the other side. The thought of seeing your face warms my heart. Be well, and be happy, my dear Anton. goodbye, but just for now, you're Sophia.
Now, having found some closure, Layton, Luke, and Flora finally get to leave the eerie town of Volsense. Our timeline then takes us to the events of my favourite Professor Layton game, Professor Layton and the Lost Future, set some months after Pandora's Box. As with all good Layton games, our mystery begins with a letter.
Professor, I hope this letter finds you well. As for me, I am in quite a predicament. You see, the London we know and love has been thrown into absolute chaos. To complicate matters, the calamity I speak of does not take place in your time. This may be difficult to believe, but I am writing to you from 10 years in the future. I know this is a lot to take in, but I'll explain it all soon. For now, I ask that you head to the clock shop on Midland Road in Baldwin. I look forward to seeing you again. Your student, Luke Triton.
Obviously, this is strange and bizarre, so Layton and Luke have no option but to follow the letter's instructions and head to this mysterious clock shop. Once inside, the shop owner, Cog, activates the large centerpiece of a clock which shakes the ground beneath Layton and Luke. With nothing else of note within the store, they exit to find that they have actually, somehow, been teleported to 10 years in the future. From what we can gather from the townsfolk of future London, Professor Layton in this time isn't exactly the hero we know him to be. And as future Luke continues to communicate via more letters to guide them, all doubt about this being the future is squashed, as Layton goes to where he parked his Laytonmobile, only to find an old, broken down car. Eventually, the duo meet up with future Luke in a casino, who challenges Layton to a battle of wits. This triggers arguably the most iconic scene from the franchise, as the group are hounded by evil future Layton and his future gang known as the Family. These are the two main mysteries at play. How is it possible that time travel is real? And what events have transpired that would lead Professor Layton to a life of crime 10 years in the future? While wandering around future London, Layton catches a glimpse of a woman who looks strikingly like his first love, Claire. But that's ridiculous, since Claire died a decade ago as a test subject in the research into time travel at the Institute of Polydimensional Physics. Unless... she didn't actually die, did she? Did she actually make it to the future? 1 year later, Luke, our Luke, writes a letter to Professor Layton to reassure him that he has settled down in a new city, but a mystery has unravelled in this unnamed town that he needs Layton's help to solve. And although we don't see any of the details of Luke's problem, with hindsight, we know that the city that Luke is referring to is Steam Bison, the setting of the upcoming title, Professor Layton and the New World of Steam. Before I talk about the upcoming game, I wanted to talk briefly about why exactly I love this franchise, other than the fact that all of my favourite fictional characters just happen to be archaeologists. In a fantastical world like what we see throughout this franchise, a character like Professor Layton from a small town like Stansbury is one that is necessary for balance. And this is what I find particularly genius about Professor Layton, is that yes, this is London, this is a crime that we need to solve, puzzles have solutions, but sometimes they just don't. We're tempted into each story with the promise of realism to ground us in the truth of an answer, but also, Luke can talk to animals. I didn't know where to put this in the video, because it felt irrelevant no matter when I mentioned it, but Luke can talk to animals. Like, Luke Triton is seen throughout this franchise consistently and fluently communicating with animals of all species, both to further the mainline plot and as a part of his side quests. But also time travel? Maybe? Perhaps a little bit of time travel? Like, logic flies out of the window with these games, and that sounds like a criticism because these are puzzle games, but coming from me, it's not. I love it. This is all represented by an aesthetic sense made standard in Level 5's popular titles, like Ni no Kuni or Yokai Watch, this time brought to life by the gorgeous art of Takuzo Nagano. It's a deceptively simple art style, but so distinct and, I don't know, shapely? Is that a word? This is shapely art. I've seen a lot of people online call this style reminiscent of Art Nouveau or even Linclair, but something about the latter comparison doesn't sit right with me. I definitely see it, but Linclair tends more to relative realism, whereas the visual aesthetic of Layton is so prone to hyperbole that it becomes almost dreamlike. And I haven't even mentioned the accompanying music heard throughout the franchise, composed by Tomohito Nishiura. Oh, it's so good! Are you hearing this? It's Nuevo Tango by way of Balmusette. It's inquisitive and suspenseful and French. It's very French for some reason. I've been neglecting to talk about the gameplay specifically, since that's hardly relevant to the point of this video, but if you've ever played a Professor Layton game, then you're missing out on my favourite aspect of the franchise. The minigames. As you explore each town and solve its puzzles, Layton carries with him a briefcase. For the player, this acts as a menu screen with a notes section to record your observations and a mystery section so you can keep track of the big questions. And, most importantly, a minigame. Each installment has a new set of minigames, usually there's about 2 or 3 per game, and they primarily act as a low-stakes B-plot for Luke. This is completely irrelevant, but my favourite minigame is Rabbit Show, in which you get to pick a bunny to train to perform live theatre. It's cinema. Brings a tear to my eye. Where is her EGOT? Now let's combine every form of artistry that we've discussed, from the writing, to the instrumentals, the art, the puzzles. It all serves a monumental franchise that celebrates love and curiosity and thoughtfulness. The hours and hours of love and craftsmanship all poured into each and every installment to establish a vast world, with an ensemble cast that grows with you and helps you grow in tandem. I truly believe that something so spectacular is not only exceedingly hard to produce, but also, thankfully, boasts a legacy even harder to destroy. You know how I said I cried at the recent A New World of Steam trailer? I didn't say those were tears of happiness. A New World of Steam was initially revealed in February 2023 via Nintendo Direct, and even though we didn't see any gameplay, of course, I was genuinely surprised. After a whole decade had passed since Azran Legacy, I was so happy to see that Level 5 hadn't forgotten about Layton. I mean, I had made it a hobby at this point to tell everyone about my love for this game, so to see it actually revived for a new generation, I was willing to ignore the pit in my stomach. 1 month later, we got spoon-fed some more information about this game. It would be solidly within the steampunk aesthetic and set in an American town called Steam Bison. Okay, well, still no gameplay, obviously, but that's fine. And sure, steampunk and America aren't exactly my 2 favourite things, but I know for a fact that some fans wanted to see this. Probably. I mean, Saint Mystère in Curious Village is French for mystery, thus takes French inspiration. Frauenborg in Azran Legacy has Borg in it, so Swedish, I don't know. The only location that doesn't really have a direct IRL counterpart is London? So seeing a game set in America this time makes sense, I guess. Flashing forward to the end of that year, in November 2023, we finally had a projected release year. 2025. But still no gameplay, huh? Yeah, that's fine, that's fine. It was also, coincidentally around this time, that Level 5 would hard launch their use of generative AI in their upcoming projects. Specifically, using Stable Diffusion to generate concept art, background images, and 3D mapping, as well as ChatGPT for character concepts, quest content, and website development. Immediately after, the Professor Layton subreddit banned any and all discussion of generative AI. So, yeah, no, that's totally, Professor Layton is dead, huh? Around this time in my life, I was a teacher for real children at a real school, and still the most pressing issue on my mind was my personal conspiracy that this game wasn't real. Level 5 were obviously playing some large-scale prank that would, from my perspective, only really affect me. And they got me good, because who would I even talk to about this? The other 3 Professor Layton fans on reddit.com? Yeah, not anymore. The next time we would hear about this installment would be at the 2024 Tokyo Game Show in September. Yes, nearly a whole year later. Remember when the yearly updates would be a whole new game? At this point, I'm not even concerned with seeing gameplay, I'm just concerned with why everything they're showing us looks so grey. What, ChatGPT couldn't generate some hues? And what's somehow more depressing than how this looks is we wouldn't hear anything else until another year later at the next Tokyo Game Show in 2025. You know, the year the game was going to be released, and all Level 5 did was show the same demo on the Switch 2, this time to highlight the Switch 2's mouse functionality. They turned my sweet boy into a tech showcase! And if you're picking up on this pattern of behaviour, I'm sure you can figure out how long it would be until we heard any more news. Another year later. I don't know why I'm still talking like I'm teaching a history class here. This is breaking news. They showed this trailer in the Level 5 Wannabe Direct earlier this year, and let me tell you, there were some defenders of Level 5 back in 2023 following the AI reveal. I saw everything from, if it's just for concepts it's fine, to, no, they were just showcasing how AI is used during game development in general. They're not actually saying that they use it. Following this Level 5 Vision stream, I didn't hear any of that. All I heard was anguish from Yokai Watch fans in particular because, oh my god. I'm not, nor have I ever been, a Yokai Watch fan, but my deepest condolences to my yokai siblings. Obviously, even if this looked phenomenal, it would still be AI slop. Even if they just used generative AI for the code, it would still be slop. Even if the only thing they used generative AI for was the concept art, it would still be slop. But this is actually insulting. AI is enabling time savings that can't be dismissed, and I believe this has the potential to upend common sense in game development. It might shift us from a world where developing the AAA games everyone wants to play takes 5 to 10 years to one where we get to enjoy them every 2 years. Hino's statement here is obviously an effort to run PR for AI in video games in anticipation of Level 5's AI-ridden upcoming projects. But even if I supported generative AI, this statement makes no sense. A world in which we get to enjoy games every 2 years, that was the world we lived in 2008 to 2013. This may be controversial to say, but even if the original 6 Professor Layton games did take 5 to 10 years per installment, good! I want human creativity to be poured into these games, and I want it to take as long as it needs to. I don't want a backlog of poorly thought out, unoriginal, repulsive-looking games to roll out every other year just for the sake of it. Especially if these games are puzzle games. Like, am I crazy? This is the most irrelevant point. But why would I want the core of my puzzle game to be created by an AI model that can't solve a puzzle that I could when I was 7? Or, in the case of this 2023 research paper, GPT-4 Can't Reason, perform basic reasoning. Mabel's heart rate at 9 AM was 75 beats per minute, and her blood pressure at 7 PM was 120/80. She died at 11 PM. Was she alive at noon?
Based on the information provided, it's impossible to definitively say whether Mabel was alive at noon.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Listen, I wasn't this angry in my last video about generative AI because then I was discussing the use of generative AI as a chatbot as it pertains to AI psychosis and delusion. But this is where I get to be less sensitive because you actually can't use AI for anything. It can't even count. Hi.
Hello. How can I assist you today?
Hello.
How can I assist you today?
Greetings.
Greetings. How can I assist you today?
Hi there.
Hi there. How can I help you today?
Hello.
Hello. How can I assist you today?
You've been greeted a few times so far. 3 of those greetings were actually from my girlfriend. The rest from me. How many times did I greet you?
If your girlfriend greeted me 3 times and all the other greetings were from you, then you greeted me 4 times. This is assuming that all 7 greetings, hi, hello, greetings, hi there, hello, were included in the count.
And of course it can't, because it isn't a person. It's lines of code used to regurgitate what you said back to it. Obviously. Akihiro Hino founded Level 5 in 1998. He's been doing this job for nearly 30 years. If he didn't want to make games anymore, that's completely reasonable. But you know what I do when I don't want to do something anymore? I stop doing it. You don't have to pass off your job to a robot and then praise it while it pushes you off a cliff. Now, obviously I know that AI generation is not a part of the puzzle creation process in these games. In the first 6, the puzzles were designed by Akira Taga, and following his passing in 2016, Kuniaki Iwanami took over as puzzle designer for Millionaire's Conspiracy. So A New World of Steam is actually a pretty big deal, considering it's the first mainline installment with puzzles designed by someone who isn't Akira Taga. For this game specifically, the puzzles have been designed by Quizknock, a Japanese media group / YouTube channel. And I'm not angry about this at all. From what I've seen, Quizknock are an extremely competent group who have dedicated a decade to making puzzle-based content, although their work leans a little more towards maths and kanji-based problems, so all I can do is trust on their reputation as Tokyo University alumni and say that their work in the new Layton game is probably going to meet expectations. Plus, I like this jumping game they have on their website. That's fun. Aside from A New World of Steam, Level 5 has 7 upcoming games in the foreseeable future. And I'm not asking you to boycott or anything, that's a financial decision for you to make. But based on the attitudes and projects that I've seen recently coming out of this company, unfortunately, A New World of Steam is going to be the first Professor Layton game in 17 years that I'm simply not going to play. I'm turning in my stylus and top hat. I quit.